If you are about to go to college, or you graduated with student debt, or you have a kid who's about to, you've probably done the math and wondered how numbers that large are even legal. And you've probably gotten the standard answers: cost of living, professors, campus. But why it still feels like a lot? In this video, we will try to cover where the money comes from, where it goes, and who's made sure the system doesn't change. Once you understand it, the number stops looking like an accident. Let's start with what actually happened to the price. In 1980, a year at a public four-year university cost around $3,500 in today's dollars. Today, that same year costs over $11,000, and that's just tuition and fees, before room and board. Private universities have gone from roughly $26,000 in today's dollars to over $40,000. Those numbers have outpaced inflation by a factor of 3 to 4, depending on the school. That matters because wages haven't done the same thing. Median household income, adjusted for inflation, has grown about 32% over the past 30 years. So the gap between what college costs and what a family can actually absorb has been widening for 3 decades straight. If you've ever felt like you did everything right, went to school, got the degree, started paying it back, and still ended up behind, this is part of the reason why. The price was designed to stretch beyond what most people could pay in cash, which meant most people had to borrow. And the borrowing is where it gets complicated. Here's what changed the whole system. Before the 1970s, student lending was limited. Banks would only lend what they thought a student could repay. That put a natural ceiling on tuition. You couldn't charge more than students could actually get access to. Then, the federal government stepped in with guaranteed student loans. The idea was access. Make college available to people who couldn't afford it up front. That part worked, but it had a side effect nobody wanted to talk about. When the federal government guarantees loans with no cap on the amount, colleges no longer have to worry about whether their tuition is affordable. The money will arrive regardless, so prices went up, and when prices went up, the government raised loan limits to keep up, and colleges raised prices again. This is the loop that's been running for 50 years. A 2015 study by the New York Fed found that for every dollar increase in subsidized loan availability, tuition goes up by about 60 cents. The ceiling on tuition disappeared the moment the government guaranteed the loans. Prices rose to meet the money and have kept rising ever since. The easy assumption is that tuition pays for teaching. It doesn't, or at least not mostly. The money went somewhere else and the hiring data makes it visible. Between 1976 and 2018, the number of college administrators grew by 164%. Over the same period, the number of faculty grew by 92%, roughly in line with enrollment. The administrator growth outpaced enrollment by double. What are those administrators doing? Some run compliance offices required by federal regulation. Some manage the research enterprise and its grant applications. A lot of them run things that have nothing directly to do with the academic mission. Student life offices, diversity and inclusion departments, athletics administration, campus recreation, career services, enrollment management. Each of those functions grew because universities were competing with each other on amenities, not just academics. This is what researchers call the amenities arms race. Once one school builds a state-of-the-art gym, or a climbing wall, or a new student union, the schools competing for the same applicants feel pressure to match it. Those buildings get financed with bonds. The bond payments show up in operating costs. The operating costs show up in tuition. The money is not going to the classroom. It's going to the institutional machinery that universities have built around themselves over 40 years. This is the part that explains why the number won't come down on its own. Universities carry significant debt. The top 500 universities in the US held over $250 billion in bonds as of recent estimates. Bond covenants, the terms of those loans, often require universities to maintain certain revenue levels. Cutting tuition means cutting revenue, which can technically put a university in violation of its own debt agreements. The price isn't just a reflection of costs, it's collateral. The loan servicing industry has a direct interest in keeping balances high. Companies like Navient and Nelnet make money on the interest and fees attached to large loan balances. A system where tuition drops sharply and fewer people needed to borrow large amounts would be a worse business for them. They've spent significant money lobbying to keep the current structure in place. The endowment model at wealthy universities has its own logic. A large endowment is managed for growth. The goal is to grow the fund, not spend it down. Harvard's endowment crossed $50 billion. Yale's is around $40 billion. Universities with endowments that size could cut tuition substantially without endangering their operations. Most don't, because the endowment is managed as an asset to be preserved and grown, and because high sticker prices are part of how elite schools signal prestige. And then there's Congress. Members of Congress on both sides have accepted significant money from the for-profit education and loan servicing industries. The bills that would have capped interest rates on federal student loans or allowed bankruptcy discharge of student debt have failed repeatedly. Not because there's no public support for them, but because the people who'd lose money from those changes have spent heavily to block them. The institutions raising tuition face no financial penalty for doing so. The students paying it signed loan agreements because the alternative was not going. That's worth knowing. The price will keep climbing as long as the loan system guarantees it gets paid. Universities face no penalty for raising it, and students have no real alternative to borrowing. None of those three things are laws of nature. They are policy levers, and policy levers can be moved.